What if Naruto had the golden touch? How would this affect a Naruto story, and would Naruto be able to control these incredible powers that would be gifted to him by a genie? Now, we all know in the original tale that we all were most likely told when we were like in third to like first grade of the story of the King Midas, who was so greedy that he wanted everything to turn to gold. Well, what would happen if we threw that ability into the world of the Naruto verse and slapped the name Kekkei Genkai into it? That's exactly what Naruto is going to be bestowed with. So if you guys are interested in how this story will unfold and what's going to change into the Naruto story, then make sure to stay up to date with the part, turn on the post notifications to be up to date with part 2 when it drops, probably tomorrow or the next day. That said, if you guys are going to enjoy today's video, share it with a friend and leave a like if you guys finished the whole thing. But with all that out of the way, go ahead and enjoy the video.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Okay, so we start a story in a strange position where I usually don't like to start my stories off with. We're actually going to be starting the story off when Naruto is about 4 years old, when he recently gets kicked out of Hiruzen's house, and the way that we're going to be starting this is essentially right after Naruto pretty much runs out of money. We all know that in the original events of Naruto would usually be given a small allowance by Hiruzen and also have his apartment paid for. That's how Naruto was able to survive, and whenever he ran out of money, he would usually have to go out and fish for his food, or be treated to some free ramen by the ramen shop guy, right? We all know this story, right? But the thing in this version is that Hiruzen's going to be portrayed in a little bit more of a villainous role just to make the story hit a little different. So what we're going to be implying in this version of the story is basically Naruto would be very poor and would be out in the woods looking for some fish. Suddenly Naruto would end up falling down some random crevice that had like trees and like branches, and Naruto just fell down. When he fell down, he found a strange cave, and when he ended up pretty much like starting to like go towards the direction, he like got up, he was like dusting himself off, you know what I mean? He began looking all over the place, just wondering, what is this place? This is when suddenly he basically like looked to the front where there was a little bit of light there. It was just like a little shimmer, a glow. Naruto ran towards it and immediately held this lamp in his hand. Now in Aladdin-like fashion, he begins to rub the dirt off of it, and this is when suddenly some genie would pop out. Not a blue one, but one in the episode of the Naruto filler. Do you guys remember that Naruto filler episode where they wanted to make a wish and like all the genin were pretty much fighting for the lamp? That's basically what Naruto does, except when he sees the genie, the first thing that comes to mind when the genie pretty much tells him he has one wish is essentially the fact that he has no money. Naruto would think about the thing that costs the most in his world, and as of this moment, it would be gold. So Naruto would wish that everything that he touches would turn to gold. The genie would ask him, like a gold Kekkei Genkai, and Naruto would say, I guess. And suddenly, the genie snaps, and Naruto suddenly has the ability to turn things to gold. The genie would then say, that is your one wish. See me in another 1,000 years. And Naruto would pretty much like just sit there as the genie goes right back into the lamp, and Naruto's just wondering what he has to do now. How is he even gonna get out of there? Naruto would ponder this question for a couple of days, and suddenly he would end up by kind of just crawling his way out of there by digging out of there and trying his absolute best to just jump from wall to wall to wall to wall until eventually he was able to get out. He learned how to do a bit of parkour that day, since the hole was about, say, 15 feet deep. So it was pretty deep, but nothing that he wasn't gonna be able to get out of at the end of the day, right? So basically what ends up happening following this small little situation is essentially Naruto goes around turning things into gold and making people very happy. Naruto was able to make a couple of things to gold and not exactly just show it off to everybody, but only to merchants. He would do this and he would use this method to essentially buy himself all the food that he could possibly want. Even the merchants that usually would throw things at him or tell him to get lost would now at this point be telling him that he should actively come to their store. Naruto was finally being shown signs of respect and signs of being wanted whatsoever. Naruto was loving this, and Naruto was feeling as if he could finally belong thanks to this brand new ability. But it is on this current day where Naruto would end up accidentally touching the man of one of the merchant's hands, and when he does so, the man would completely turn to gold. Naruto looks towards the direction of said man, and when he sees the man had turned into gold, he would drop everything, all the food that he had, as he would say to himself he didn't mean to. Everybody around the town would immediately realize this, and they would begin calling him a demon. Naruto would run out of there, seeing as he had never turned a human into gold before. This is the first time that he touched the actual human and he turned into gold, because Naruto hasn't been turning food into gold, because if he did, he would have died. But Naruto had some sort of ability to kind of control it, but it was on this day where Naruto's power began growing more and more as, he began using it more, and Naruto realized that the power was going to get overpowered and like out of control, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's basically what Naruto's kind of banking on. After he essentially transforms said man into gold, he pretty much ends up trying to run away. But it's at this moment that two Anbu members would actually get in front of Naruto and take him to report to Hiruzen's office, where Hiruzen would tell Naruto that because of what he did in harming a Konoha citizen today, he is going to now be banished to one of the outskirts of the village, and that is where Naruto's going to have to resign for the time being. Naruto's eyes would immediately widen after being told this by Hiruzen, and he would begin to essentially start begging for Hiruzen to change his mind. Hiruzen simply looks down at his papers and hits his pipe. Sorry, I smacked my mic, so if you guys heard like a rattling noise, that's what it was. But Hiruzen would simply hit his pipe and then look towards the direction of Naruto before simply telling him that he can leave now. And Naruto would begin trying to ask more, but the Anbu would immediately grab him and pretty much escort him to his brand new house, where Naruto was essentially going to be having to live in a shack that was made in a literal couple of hours by some ninja that didn't have any clue how to even make a shack. It's thin and it could barely be considered a roof over the top of his head. Naruto, upon being thrust here, would be given some water and some food to survive for the month. No money. Naruto would sit there as he would ponder to himself how he's supposed to survive. And it's at this moment that Naruto would realize that he's going to have to grow up faster than he was going to before if he's going to want to survive out here in these woods. He's not near the Forest of Death, but he's also not near a great part of the village that he's going to be completely safe in. So for the next week, he's pretty much going to be having to focus on building his own house, which is going to be made entirely of gold. And actually, no, it's not going to be made entirely of gold. I changed my mind. It's not going to be made out of gold. Instead, the outside is going to be made out of this like wood and stuff material, and the inside insulation system is just going to be gold. So whenever it's hot, Naruto pretty much starts heating up in there severely. When it's cold, Naruto was decently protected from the harsh environment of the outside world. And that's pretty much how Naruto's gonna have to survive for a little bit, just until he finally gets a little bit of control over his new abilities, jutsu, and said Kekkei Genkai. Naruto, through trial and error, after a couple of years of training, 8 years to be exact, would finally be able to gain some comprehension of his abilities that he now has access to. And the way that Naruto would be able to survive in terms of food was by selling his golden, things to merchants who were very greedy. And that's how Naruto would essentially make money, buy food for himself and clothe himself to go into the village. Also changing his hairstyle and cutting off his whiskers to appear different, to give off a different aspect of himself. His training, like I said, pretty much just consisted of trying trial and error, and he would pretty much try different things over and over and over again until eventually he figured out how to finally control his abilities of gold manipulation. Eventually, he made it so that he could actually give himself a light coat of gold around himself that could actually harden and protect himself, make his hit stronger, and make his defense almost impenetrable. The only one thing that he would be lacking in is chakra control, because that's the only thing that Naruto hasn't exactly been putting too much effort into. I mean, why would he? For the past 8 years, he's only been thinking about one thing: controlling his gold Kekkei Genkai. the curse that was placed upon him by the genie that he met in that cave that one day. And after this, he essentially continues to train for said 8 years until eventually he would tell Hiruzen that he's finally ready to return to the village. After another month, Hiruzen would finally hear out Naruto's pleas and would tell him that he has one task: to unreverse someone that he can turn into gold, like to turn an Anbu member into gold and then reverse it, and that if he doesn't do it, he'll be killed. Naruto would literally just walk up to the Anbu member, touch him once before then reversing the effects and transforming him back into a normal person. Hiruzen would be pretty pleased by this notion and would then tell Naruto that he has, he's gonna only have a couple of weeks to integrate himself into the academy. So good luck trying to get into this year. He'll be lucky if he gets into the next. Naruto would, bow down to Hiruzen and immediately begin rushing out of the room, before then thinking to himself that Hiruzen definitely was basically plotting against him, not wanting him to win, and Naruto just wonders why Hiruzen hates Naruto so much. And to be frank, why wouldn't Hiruzen? I mean, the Nine Tails killed his wife, and his position of just being a free man, not having to do no more paperwork, was pretty much taken away from him by Naruto because Minato died protecting the village and Naruto and the Nine-Tailed Beasts inside of him. That's like the little basis that this version of Hiruzen is going off of, just for this point in time, by the way. After this, he would now be known as the weird kid in the academy, and Naruto doesn't really go on to display many of his abilities, seeing as, Naruto doesn't want to pretty much flash that out all over the place. He kind of wants to keep that under wraps. And he would actually go on to fail the Ninja Academy test because his ninja knowledge is low. He would get tricked by Mizuki, and eventually he would try to take the scroll from Naruto. However, this time Naruto, after hearing of Mizuki's tactics, would rush towards the direction of Mizuki at top speeds that would actually catch Mizuki off guard and would be able to put his hand on Mizuki's face, completely transforming Mizuki into gold in a matter of seconds. Mizuki would look at Naruto before saying, "Wait, no, Naruto, and he'd stop. His entire body would be covered in gold, and Iruka would watch this display of power as he would look to Naruto and tell him that he was wrong about him, before then giving Naruto the Genin headband, establishing Naruto's role into the newly formed Team 7, and now Naruto's going to be able to get ready to pretty much meet his brand new teammates, Sasuke, Sakura, and his Jonin sensei, Kakashi Hatake. The next day, Naruto would wake up after essentially going on to fix up his room that had collected dust and a lot of insects over the years of it being unattended. Naruto would begin getting his stuff, drink his bowl of cereal, which would just so happen to have rotten milk, and then proceed to make his way towards the classroom. Naruto would begin to get a strange feeling in his stomach, and he would pretty much decide that it doesn't matter, as he ends up walking towards the classroom, entering inside, and then meeting his teammates Sakura and Sasuke. This is when he sits over pretty nearby them, and eventually all the Jonin senseis would arrive except for Kakashi, who would end up getting there about 2 hours later. This time around, Naruto's not exactly going to be playing that very, dumb prank in essence, and instead he's just kind of going to wait there and pretty much fall asleep. Eventually, when Kakashi enters the room and he sees Naruto passed out, he just taps him on the head. Naruto wakes up, goes upstairs, and the introductions would happen just like many of you would expect. I'm not even going to go over it because it's so basic, it's not even worth trying. But on one good thing, we save some time and we get it to the juicy parts of this video faster. So, we take the good with the bad. That said, the very next day after these introductions, Kakashi would pretty much tell them to not eat, and they would do so, going towards the training grounds to meet Kakashi, only for him to arrive about 4 to 5 hours after they arrive at like 7 a.m. So he arrives at like 12, and then he goes on to essentially inform them about the fact that they need to grab these bells, and if they don't, they're going back to the academy, saying that only 2 of them are going to pass, leading for the entire team to pretty much have a bit of tension build between them. It's at this moment that Kakashi would have realized that Sasuke is essentially trying to put himself on top of either of them, and whoever of them passes is going to pass. Naruto just looks with a dumb face and then just kind of looks towards the direction of Kakashi, having more of of a serious personality, just due to the fact that he's pretty much been alone for about 8 years of his life, not really having too much human interaction and having his hair down to show that he's not really as outgoing as he would be in the original versions of events. So Naruto would simply stand back with a darkened clothes instead of the bright orange colors that normally would be rocked by Naruto Uzumaki. As soon as Kakashi says to go, Naruto would immediately pretty much kick a rock to the side before putting his hands in his pockets and then rushing towards the direction of Kakashi. Kakashi, not really expecting Naruto to have shown such speed, has his book out and would actually have to sidestep using a bit of speed to actually dodge out of Naruto's direction. But it was already too late, seeing as Naruto had already slightly gotten a touch of Kakashi sensei by one of the bells. As soon as Kakashi notices this, with blinding speed he would cut off one of the bells, leading it to drop to the ground and be covered in gold. As Naruto looks towards the direction of Kakashi, who would look at him with a dumbfounded expression on his face, as Naruto then rushes in once more and tries to grab him, touch him at all means, swiping at the air as Kakashi would jump back, backflip, and essentially parry each one of Naruto's attacks. Naruto would then go in for taijutsu attacks, but Kakashi would realize that he can't even dodge them or parry them in the traditional sense by simply moving them out of the way and by, grabbing his arms and redirecting the trajectory. So instead he has to pretty much parry every single little attack that Naruto throws towards the direction of Kakashi. Kakashi, once he realizes this, kind of understands that he needs to create shadow clones, and each shadow clone would essentially get turned into gold until it pops, and the gold the gold would just disappear with the clones. Naruto, seeing that Kakashi's kind of catching on, would begin getting irritated, and it's at this moment that Sasuke jumps out of the bushes and shoots 3 fireball jutsus at the direction of Kakashi as he widens his eyes and says, "Genin art!" But then he jumps back and suddenly we see Naruto there who says, "Checkmate!" But he touches the Kakashi and it turns out to be a substitution. He hits a log, the log turns to gold and falls onto the ground with a giant thud behind it as Sasuke gives Naruto a strange expression and asks him what that ability is. Naruto says questions later as he rushes towards the direction of Kakashi once more, and he and Sasuke are both engaging in the battle. Sakura, who would be watching in the background, would begin to think to herself that she needs to do something. Sasuke-kun, he's gonna get hurt. She rushes in and she's like, "I'll help too." She throws a shuriken that almost actually hits Sasuke because she was not looking at what she was doing, and Sasuke's forced to pretty much draw back, leading Naruto to get kicked away by Kakashi and then essentially back away from the direction of Naruto. Naruto, once he gets up from the ground, would look towards the direction of Sakura with a death stare, and so would Sasuke, as she kind of just stands there looking at them both as they both rush back in, and they would fight for another literal hour. Until eventually, Kakashi would say, "All right, you guys failed to get the bells. Now, you have to be tied to the stump." He would go on to tie Naruto and Sasuke and not Sakura, and what he would go on to do is essentially see if Sakura was willing to help her teammates. She goes on to happily feed Naruto, and Naruto would simply watch with a blank expression, as Sasuke would look at Sakura and say, "We need to feed our teammate. If we're all not at 100%, then this is going to be even harder than it already is." Naruto's stomach would growl, and Sakura would immediately be like, "Okay, Sasuke, whatever you say," as she feeds Naruto, and suddenly we see Kakashi jumping out of the bushes as he looks at them and says, You pass!" They're all dumbfounded, and he goes on to explain the shinobi way that Obito taught him long ago, going I'm pretty sure you guys know the saying, I forgot it, but basically he goes on to say that, and then goes on to simply explain to the team that those who abandon their teammates are scum, but those who those who abandon the rules are scum, but those who abandon their teammates are worse than scum, right? And then, they kind of understand the message slightly, and then Kakashi goes on to pretty much tell them to get ready, seeing as they're now going to be going on missions. And for the following 2 weeks, they would go on D-rank missions, which would essentially consist of helping out with groceries, walking old ladies down the street, capturing cats, and things of that nature. Very, very simple missions like capturing wild animals and things like that that are just being overall pests. Eventually, after 2 weeks would be over, Sakura would actually be the one to like slightly remark to the Hokage that these missions are too easy. Hiruzen, hearing this, would say, "Oh, so you would like higher ranked missions," and Sakura goes on to profusely apologize before Kakashi would go on to state that the team seems to be ready. Hiruzen would listen to this by Kakashi and would then nod his head before then assigning them a C rank mission to guard the bridge builder Tazuna to the land of the waves. Eventually, Kakashi looks towards the direction of Hiruzen and then goes on to say, "Alright, that's what we're going to be doing then," as Tazuna walks into the room all drunk and then begins to pretty much slander everybody on Team 7. Everybody immediately begins to get the impression that this guy is just a stinking drunk, and this is when all their first impressions would happen. He then goes on to meet the team the very next day at the bridge or at the village gates, and it's at this moment that they would embark on their quest to make their way towards the land of the waves. Along their way, about 3 hours or so into it, this is when Kakashi would spot a puddle not too far off in front of them. Naruto would spot said puddle as well, and when they're walking nearby it, the two demon brothers would lunge out as they rush towards the direction of Kakashi and essentially rush at him with chains and like their claw things as they go on to strike Kakashi, effectively killing him in front of the team. Sasuke immediately lunges into action and dodges and hits one of the demon brothers away as Naruto simply stares towards the direction of one of them and gives off this aura of like intensity. Not bloodlust, seeing as Naruto's never killed, but just intense aura. The demon brother still rushes in nonetheless, and Naruto goes on to promptly touch the demon brother. As the demon brother realizes what had just happened, it would be too late. He would fall on the ground, turn to gold, as Tazuna would be shocked at Naruto's ability, asking if he can do that to anything. Naruto would nod at him before then going on to explain that he has the innate ability to essentially turn things into gold. It's his KK Genkai. After Tazuna hears this, he begins to ask Naruto if he's going on these missions solely for fun, seeing as if he really wanted to, he could probably be the richest person on earth. Naruto goes on to shrug his shoulders, saying that he's always wanted to be a ninja. For some reason, the thought of, pretty much fighting people excites him. And Tazuna, after hearing this, would say no more to Naruto, seeing as he kind of gives off this aura of "don't talk to me," and he would pretty much back away from Naruto as Kakashi arrives, unveiling to the team that he was never really even hurt. Everybody immediately goes on to pretty much say that, how could he do that, that they were shocked, and Sasuke and Naruto goes on to say like, okay, whatever, before getting right back to business and essentially walking a couple more hours when eventually fog would pretty much begin to thicken, and Tazuna would explain to the team that this is a normal occurrence in the land of the waves. Kakashi would not think twice about this, and suddenly Naruto would throw a shuriken at the direction of a white bunny. When he goes over to pick it up, Sakura would immediately start berating him, telling him how could he be so cruel. But it's at this moment that a gigantic blade would come at their direction and Kakashi would scream, "Everybody duck!"